Holy Toledo, ladies and gentlemen, hit the brakes because we have a pullback in the market right now, especially with tech stocks. And that is because we have 4 of the Magnificent 7 stocks that are set to report their earnings this week. What's happening as we speak is we see a lot of uncertainty and emotion that's flooding the market, questioning is the amount of capital getting put into developing AI, is that going to pay off? Are we going to see that in the actual earnings report? Is it going to be accurately reflected in terms of return on investment? And especially with the AI industry that is continuing to boom, you have the whole question of valuation that is starting to really become a trend. And what on top of that, we also have the Fed that's going to be releasing their decision on interest rates. We have a lot of money that's falling into small caps, and even with Palantir right now pulling back a little bit. Earnings set here next week, Monday. We have a lot of exciting things to go through. Make sure you always hit that like button and subscribe for daily videos. Pop it up on the screen here. Let's talk about what's going on specifically in the market. We got the S&P 500, NASDAQ down about 0.5 to 1%. One of the big things that we are seeing in the market here is NVIDIA drops 7% ahead of these big tech earnings, which is being a large momentum mover for the broader market being pulled out just due to the market capitalization of NVIDIA. Now, stocks are really potentially in a momentous week right now, featuring the Fed's interest rate decision and the July jobs report. Also talking about here, as we mentioned before, the expectation for rate cuts against the concerns that they have possibly lost their AI-driven mojo, talking about the big stocks. Now, eyes are on Microsoft. That quarterly report is going to be due after trading ends tomorrow, which is set for the stage also for Apple, Amazon, and Meta, large key players and stakeholders within the AI industry, to report their earnings in the following days. And what you have here with the AI jitters, especially the Fed, is expected to bring no change in the borrowing cost on Wednesday in terms of the federal funds rate, but hoping to lay the groundwork for a rate cut come in September. Now, the probability is sky high for the first interest rate cut to be occurring in September. And that's what the market's really pricing in. If we see any changes, expect a lot of volatility that will be pooling into the market. With these semi-chip conductor stocks, NVIDIA here trading and lower, and especially what we need to know is that this, I think, is just a capitulation of NVIDIA's skyrocketing. We've seen 750% gain since 2023. Seeing here, like I said, investors getting a little bit scared on, are the valuations behind some of these stocks too high? What we specifically see with NVIDIA covering right here before we get into Palantir, you guys want to talk about, especially with earnings next week. NVIDIA sitting at $103. Now, this is basically at 1,000 with the pre-10-for-1 stock split. And what we see with NVIDIA is finding a little bit of support here. I think there is a small and subtle area of support at $100. That's also a psychological price zone. So it'll be interesting to see here what happens with NVIDIA going forward. Now let's talk about what the bread and butter that we've usually been talking about in the channel. Palantir Technologies loses support at the 27. Now this isn't necessarily a bad thing, but what we're seeing here is just basically kind of trading along with what we're seeing in the general market, especially with these AI stocks, and Palantir is really heavily involved with AI. Volume comes in at 31 million. This is kind of a little bit lower than what we've typically been seeing on average. However, one important thing that we are seeing in terms of the option market, still a decent amount of call volume at the 28. And this could be due to the fact that we do have analysts that are continuing to adjust their stock price ahead of earnings. So remember, Carp had said we are on fire in the first quarter one of their earnings report. And talking about that, the uncertainty going into Palantir Technologies is starting to get a little bit high. This doesn't mean I'm bearish or anything by means. Palantir is still doing very well in terms of a fundamental company. I mean, look at its balance sheet. But talking about the momentum right now, the trendiness, and what traders are trying to do ahead of Palantir's earnings reports. Now, in terms of the momentum, regardless of kind of what they're actually going to be reporting, these are what some of the big key players are starting to hypothesize. You have Citi right here saying that Palantir quarter 2 will still be somewhat choppy. They predict here, they raise their price target though to 28 from 25, keeping a neutral stance. they basically say here it's going to be somewhat choppy because they expect Palantir to deliver a 1 point beat on top line metrics for Q2 with potential upside for those profitability metrics. However, one big thing that they do point, though, they think that government contracts still seem depressed through the conversations with management, talking about hoping for confidence and acceleration in the long term, but express some caution in the near term. You also have Jefferies coming in here, also increasing their price target to 28 from 24, and affirmed a hold rating on the shares ahead of the Q2 report. So, talking about here, the investment firm also called Palantir the most expensive name in its coverage, and that is not necessarily completely false, because right now you're seeing a lot of bearish articles being thrown out across the board for PLTR. Of course, really talking about their valuation right now and highlighting that due to the fact that Palantir is still trading at a very, very high price to earnings. Now, we've seen them up year to date 63%. But however, talking about Palantir, it has established some very important partnerships. And I think that's what is more important for PLTR in the long term, considering that we're seeing a lot of criticism right now against not just AI stocks in general, but also specifically looking at Palantir here. Next week is going to be very interesting. Earnings per share is sitting at 8 cents with a revenue of 652 million. What I could personally see in my own prediction, and ladies and gentlemen, this is just my own opinion, so take this with a grain of salt. I think if Palantir misses one little beat in their earnings report, changes their guidance at all, or we see one little flick up, I think we're going to start to see some selling pressure due to the fact that we have a lot of people that are trading on the stock now, not due to their fundamentals, but just due to actually trying to trade the swings, trying to get on the highs, trying to get on the lows. Just joking. That's the meme in the market. Buy high, sell low. No, but getting in on the lows and selling on the highs, a lot of people do just trade off of Palantir in the short term nonetheless. One big thing that we are seeing, though, is movement into the small caps here, into IWM. This is a big trendy stock or ETF that has really been starting to gain steam across the content creators, across the media, across Wall Street. And that is because if the federal funds rate, the interest rate, does actually decrease, this means that these smaller companies will have basically access to borrow money, more access to money at a cheaper cost, be able to accumulate more debt in a cheaper cost, which is what these companies typically need to do in order to grow. And this is why we're seeing a lot of money coming into the smaller caps, also due to the fact that we are seeing some of the bigger stocks, such as the Magnificent Seven, that are starting to have a sell off and a little bit of a pullback. There's a domino effect here. Are these bigger stocks selling off, and is that market capitalization and trickling into IWM? It's very interesting to see right now. However, it's doing very well. In the beginning of July here, trading at 201 and now up at $222, doing very well for an ETF, an index fund especially. I want to know, what's your guys' prediction with all this? Do you think we're going to continue to see a sell-off here across the market through the end of the week? Do you think NVIDIA is going to be able to hold that 100? And do you think IWM is the next move in terms of ETF? And of course, Palantir, what's your prediction for earnings in terms of price action next week? I want to hear what you guys all have to say. Peace out, take care, and I'll catch you guys later.